What's going on, guys? It's Nick here from Archangel Battery, and today I'm coming at you with a video to tell you a brief description about our company, as well as go into the construction aspects of our battery, which make our battery the best battery. So without further ado, let's get on with it. So our battery was born because, and Archangel in itself was born simply because we believe that lithium was better than the traditional lead or AGM batteries that you typically see for starting cars. And we believe that for several reasons. One, lithium is lighter weight. In fact, it's about 50% that of your standard lead acid or AGM batteries. It produces a lot more cold cranking amps. It has a lot lower self-discharge rate than that of a lead acid or an AGM. And basically what that means is that if you have a battery, a lead acid and a lithium left out without charge or discharge on them, that the lithium will hold its charge very well, whereas the lead acid would have a reduction. They're also greener and they last longer. A lithium battery will last 10 years as compared to 5 to 7 on a lead acid or an AGM battery. Now that said, if you take really good care, and you put trickle charger on a lead acid, you can get more life out of it. You really can. And I don't mean to undersell that point. But you can. But ours can do that without maintenance and can do that a lot better. But I do want to mention one thing before I move on, and that is one area where lithium doesn't shine so well, and that is charging in the winter or charging when it's below freezing. So you don't want to charge a lithium battery below freezing. And so you might say, well, I live in the north and it gets below freezing all the time. We do have mitigation features for that, and I'm going to discuss that more in the construction section, but I just kind of wanted to briefly go over why one of the negative aspects of lithium as compared to, like, say, an AGM, which performs very well in the cold. But anyways, moving on. So onto the construction. So what makes our battery better? Well, our BMS is better. So our BMS is very robustly constructed. It has 2 separate components instead of just one. And that's very important because most lithium starting battery for cars that are on the market use just one. And in that one, you usually handle power, balancing, and monitoring, as well as any kind of controls that the BMS might perform. This is a huge mistake. You cannot pass all that amount of current through that one board, producing all that heat, while also simultaneously hoping to do all the other functions in that one board. It just won't happen. You won't be able to have the current in that little tiny board that they put into those batteries typically. So what we did was we broke it into 2 boards. We have one power board and one control board. The control board handles monitoring and controls. The power board handles current flow. So when you're passing a whole lot of current through the board, now you have a much bigger surface area that's thicker, that's focused on power only. And you have a control board, which is now allowed to sit there and only perform monitoring functions and control-based functions. So what are those monitoring functions? It will monitor for voltage, current, resistance, temperature, power, and based on the parameters that it sees, it can protect the battery from undervoltage, overvoltage, overcharge, undercharge, short circuits, thermal runaway, whatever you can think of, that BMS pretty much protects from, in terms of things that could potentially damage the lithium cells. I also wanted to mention that not only is that true, but our BMS can handle 300 amps charging and discharging, which is kind of unheard of, because I don't know if you've ever looked for BMSs on Amazon or tried to build your own DIY batteries, but when you do this, you'll tend to find BMSs that range anywhere from 80 to 150, or maybe you even found a Chinese one that would do 300, but typically those are very cheaply made BMSs that will break very quickly. This one is 100% designed in the United States and manufactured in the United States, as I mentioned before, or if I didn't mention before, I have now. It's also made for very high quality components that come from countries that have very good quality programs, and they're automotive certified. So it's a better BMS than anything that you're going to find on the market currently. And it handles a lot more current. Like I said, 300 amps up and down. This can allow for very fast charging and discharging of the battery, as opposed to what other manufacturers currently have. The other thing that this BMS does that's very, very unique is it's feature packed. So this BMS has an app that comes with it. It also has a on the battery push button, as well as a remote clicker, I guess you could call it. What these three things do is allow for control over the battery. So first I want to go over the cell phone because it's the most interesting. So the cell phone is a way to not only monitor the battery and be able to view the data that you need to view, but also control the battery. And it does this via Bluetooth. So what ends up happening is you have an app on your phone, it links to your battery via Bluetooth, and then you can see all the battery statistics on the battery. So for example, say you want to see the voltage on the car battery with the car off, you can see that. Say you want to see it when it cranks, you can see that. If you crank the car and you have your BMS app up, it will show the voltage going into the battery. Let's say you want to see the current leaving the battery or the current entering the battery, you can see that. Let's say you want to see the starting resistance, you can see that. Let's say you want to see the running resistance, you can see that. Let's say you want to look up histograms, you can look at those. Let's say you want to look at the estimated capacity left in the battery, you can see that. Let's say you want to look at the SOC, you can see that. All that this battery monitors. I'm not aware of any other application that monitors that many parameters. But you can monitor all those parameters. And then on top of that, it has control features. And these features are critically important. So one of the biggest features that exists on the BMS is the SOC floor. And we call it the SOC floor because it's not just a voltage floor. It's an SOC floor, which means it anticipates the state of charge, or SOC, of the battery. And if it hits a certain level, it stops the battery completely from draining. That way your battery can't die. So let's say you leave your headlights on or you leave your door open, which everyone is prone to do occasionally. Your car will not die. The battery will drain, and it'll drain until it hits a certain level, and then it'll cut it off, but it'll maintain enough state of charge to be able to crank your battery and use the alternator to recharge it. And you can set this in the app. So you can set it to whatever level you'd like, or you can just use the standard level that comes with the battery itself that's hard set into the software. Now, you might think, what if I lose my cell phone? Or what if I'm not near my battery? Okay, so several things. One, let's say you left your lights on. There is a feature in the actual BMS itself that will periodically probe and see if there's a load that's heavy on the battery. If there is, it won't let the battery crank. If there's not, aka you turn the lights off, your battery will be allowed to start. There's also the remote switch that I talked about earlier. You can press that button, it'll reset the BMS. If all else fails, underneath the hood, there's a button on the battery. You press that button, it resets your BMS. So if you don't have your phone, you always have a way to start your car if you've set the SOC4 feature and it has triggered. So moving on to the next feature. It also has a heater that you can add if you live in a northern environment or you expect to be somewhere where you may get a significant cold snap. Or if you just want to put it in there for extra protection, whatever. It also comes standard in the fully loaded, so if you buy the fully loaded feature, you'll get it anyway, regardless of whether you want it. Unless you just request that it not be in there, but I don't know why you would. It doesn't add much weight. But basically what it is it's a little 10 amp heater, and it keeps the cells warm so that you're not charging the cells in cold environments. So if it's below 32, the heater will kick on and try to keep the cells above 32. So it does this and has several mechanisms to prevent that heater from draining the battery. As you might expect, if you continue to run a load on a battery and you don't have any charging source come into it, it will drain those cells. So there's several ways it prevents this. One, it has a timer. You can set said timer and it will stop the battery from draining when the timer hits. The second thing you can do is turn the feature off completely. If you do not want the heater running, you do not have to have the heater running. You can completely shut it off. If you don't expect to be in your car for a long time or during those winter months, then you can just shut that feature off. It's totally fine. The third thing you can do is you just have it run like it would based on the thermistors that are reading the cell temperatures. And if it'll only kick on if it's below 32. Otherwise, it's not kicking on. It's not draining your battery. If you're going to run it like that, we would recommend adding at least a 20 amp charger to it. That way you can put in the 10 amps that are required by the heater as well as 10 amps required to keep the battery charged. Another feature that we've added that I find kind of interesting is the anti-theft feature. So this is a little bit unique in how we're approaching this. So this actually stops the thief from stealing the car in the first place and prevents hot wire as well. And so the reason how it does this is what you would do is you'd set your phone, you'd set the anti-theft feature, and then you walk away from your car. That's hard sets that into the BMS. Now, if you ever return back with your phone, all you have to do is go into the app, press a button, and you're good to go. If you lose your phone for whatever reason and you have that set, you can always go under the hood and press the button, or you can use the clicker on your keys. And that will reset the battery and allow you to start your car. But it's a pretty unique in that it completely shuts the power off from the battery so that the car can't be started, period. The next thing we have, feature that we have that I found was kind of novel and kind of interesting is the Find My Car feature. So if you've ever forgotten your car in a parking lot, something like that, it's just kind of a unique, kind of cool feature. It sets the coordinates in the GPS whenever you stop your car, and it remembers that, and then whenever you enter your Find My Car feature, it'll display those coordinates and tell you your coordinates, and based on where your coordinates are, it'll give you the location of where your battery is and how to get back to it. And that's kind of the gist of why the BMS is better. It's more robust, it's feature packed, and it's just designed and manufactured here in the United States with quality control and quality components. It's just really very well built. The second part of construction that really sets our battery apart is that we use the very best lithium cells that are currently on the market. They're second to none, and they are the very best battery. They have the lowest resistance. They have the most cycle life. They have the most current output, so that they can produce the most power, and they have pretty decent capacity. I could not find a battery better, and that's why we use those. They're actually cylindrical cells, which is a little bit different from the typical manufacturers who tend to use pouch cells. I would not recommend using the pouch cells that are currently on the market because there are actually no lithium iron phosphate pouch cells that are currently commercially available. If you have a lithium iron phosphate pouch cell, it is likely a knockoff brand of what used to be made by A123. A123 is the company's technology that's actually behind the cells that I am using, except that my cells actually are properly using that technology. Those pouch cells that you're finding on the internet aren't using that technology. They're using probably low quality materials, as well as some kind of reverse engineered gobbledygook. Who knows what's in that cell recipe? It's probably complete and total garbage, and it's made in a country that doesn't have any quality control concerns, or any quality control rather. It has tons of concerns. But yes, these cells are built to stand the test of time. They will last the full 10 years. They've got incredible cycle life if you're deep cycling the batteries, and that's another video that we can get into it at another time, what exactly deep cycle means. But moving on from that, and the final thing that I believe kind of sets our battery apart is that we mechanically assemble our batteries. And you can see here, this is one of the trays. So what happens is we put springs in this tray, and then we lay copper in this tray. And the springs set underneath the copper and push the copper up. The copper then touches the positive side of the cell, the cylindrical cell that sits down into the tray. You can kind of see where it sits down into it. And it pushes up against it and creates a connection. Then another one of these trays flops down on top of that with copper and springs as well. Now the springs are only on the positive side. On the negative side, you just straight have a dimple, and that connects to the negative side. Then these packs are actually secured with screws. Now you might ask yourself, why is that better than welding? Well, first of all, welds can sometimes be bad, and it's harder to evaluate a bad weld than it is with this. I feel like I have a higher chance of having a bad weld than I do of having a connection issue here. The second issue of why I don't like welding is it tends to be dangerous, and especially with the way we're constructing that. And that's another part that I'll get into in just a second. But you run the risk of eating into the cell can and potentially creating an explosion. I don't particularly like explosions, although they sometimes can be cool. They're not cool with lithium. But now getting into what I was talking about before and why we have to use a special welding process that actually makes it more dangerous is because we use copper. The problem with welding copper is that copper is very highly dissipative, meaning it dissipates heat very well. Well, to weld, you need heat. So if you're dissipating that heat away, it's not going to weld very well, and you're just going to end up heating up the cell and creating issues, or eating down into the cell, welding too long, whatever. You're not going to get a good weld. You're not going to get a good hold. It's bad, especially when the copper's thick, which is what we have. We have 0.032 inches thick copper, which is much thicker than what you would typically see in a normal battery pack. So a normal battery pack tends to use, the thickest I've ever seen is 0.02 inches thick, and they use nickel on top of that. Now, here's where copper is a lot better than nickel. It's a lot less resistive. Thus, it has more current carrying capacity at the same given thickness. So not only is ours thicker than most people that they use in their packs, it is also using copper, which is also unique. And it allows for a lot more current carrying capacity. And what that means to the consumer is a lot more cold cranking amps. So all that said, that is what sets our battery apart. There are vast differences in the batteries that are on the market between what I make and what everyone else makes. And I don't say that to run them down. I'm sure they're fine companies, but I'm saying what we have is the best. And so currently all we have right now coming out, and it's not currently available, is a 94R group. That battery is very popular, and it fits in most Dodge-based vehicles, so your Challengers, things like that. We hope to bring a lot more batteries to the market to fit in every single vehicle, but that takes a lot of money and a lot of resources that we just simply don't have. We're a small business. So we are going to crowdfund. And if you want more information about that, you can actually come see us at the event tomorrow on Saturday at, I believe it's Royal Purple Raceway. I don't know. It's Houston Motorsports Park. I don't know if they've changed the name. I think they have. But I've always known it as Royal Purple Raceway. You can go there. Feel free to come buy a ticket and come talk to us. Or you can just wait and sign up on the website, and weekly we should be sending out updates on the crowdfunding campaign that's probably going to happen in like May of 2022. And you can see more about that there at that time or through the email. But yeah, basically that's it. Everybody, if you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on gosh, I'm so bad at social media, Facebook, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. I kind of hope to release one video a week. We're we're a battery company, we're not YouTubers. We're not going to pump out like 1,000 videos, So, but that's kind of the schedule that I kind of want to be on. Yeah, thanks for watching.